What's up, everybody? This is Alex with WMD back at you again, and this time we are going to be talking about Eurorack drums, making a drum machine in the Eurorack system, why you would want to do it, and just kind of what makes it a really fun way to make drums for your electronic music production. So in this video, we're not going to be doing like a full production. We're not going to be doing bass lines or melodies or anything like that. We're just going to stick to drums. And basically, there are a lot of drum machines out there. There are a lot of new drum machines coming out. There's just tons of options. You can use your computer, and you can use hardware instruments. You can use samplers, or you can dive into the Eurorack system. So just to go over a couple reasons why you might want to consider Eurorack for your drum sounds. The first thing is that you can get different sounds than your traditional drum machines in addition to your traditional drum machine sounds. So if you want that 808 clap, there are plenty of modules that can make that. But if you want to make something that is a little bit more esoteric or just, just a little bit more creative or whatever, there are lots of ways to do that. There's also ways to make drums that you don't have out of Eurorack modules, such as using an oscillator and a VCA with an envelope just to create a kick drum. Or you can make a snare with an oscillator, a noise generator, and a mixer and a VCA, and you can kind of make those sounds customized out of other modules. What we're going to focus on is drum modules specifically, but that's just another cool reason why you can go down this rabbit hole. Another thing that makes Eurorack drums appealing is the customization factor. So as I said earlier, you can make your drums, you can use different modules, you can use modules from multiple manufacturers. Everything I've stated before, you can have a mix and match. You aren't just stuck with one thing. One thing about the Eurorack community that I'm sure you know is that buying and selling is a very popular thing. The used market thrives. And it is relatively easy to get new modules, sell old ones, and kind of have an interchangeable system. So if that appeals to you, that's a cool way to do that. And the customization factor really is just a really good selling point of Eurorack in general, but especially a Eurorack drum machine. The next thing is sequencing. There are tons of ways to sequence the Eurorack, and there's tons of ways to sequence Eurorack drums. So we're going to be using the WMD Metron sequencer. This is something that we created in order to take the best little bits and pieces and influence from drum machines and sequencers that we've used and put them in a product. But another cool thing about Eurorack is you can use different sequencers to get different results. Analog sequencers, trigger sequencers, gate sequencers, voltage sequencers, the whole thing can create a really unique and just fun and creative sound. And the last thing that I can really think of is in addition to sequencing, which is using synthesizer tricks, using synthesis tricks to use modulation and things to change up parameters and get some variety to your sound. A lot of drum machines are really stuck on the idea of here's the drum sounds and this is what you get. A lot of manufacturers have made some really cool strides in saying, okay, let's change the filter on this step and change the filter on this step. And now you can get some more variation in your sound. And with Eurorack, you kind of take that philosophy and just open it wide open, because now you can say, oh, I want to use an envelope to open a VCA that's allowing an LFO to come through to modulate this parameter, and so on and so forth. So without talking too much and not doing any music, right, we're just going to dive into it and see what we can do. So here is my system. You can see I've got the Crater kick drum. Fracture is a clap module. Chimera is a tambourine shaker kind of module. And Crucible is a cymbal synthesizer. I've got Metron and 2 Volteras here. And then I've got some support modules over here. I've got the performance mixer. This is where we're going to mix all of our audio. I've got an overseer, which is a stereo filter. We'll put that on the master so we can kind of do some DJ tricks. And then I've got a couple other things. I've got the mod box, which is an LFO. I've got the multi-mode envelope, a quad attenuator. It's always nice to have an attenuator in your system. If you have a modulation that's just too intense, you can attenuate that. I've got a DVCA just for VCA, just for anything we need to use a VCA for. And then I've got aperture and Geiger Counter, which is some extra effects. So obviously this is a pretty large system to just do drums. But when we get into making beats, you can see that it's justified just because of all of the options and creative ways you can take advantage of it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clear this out real quick so we know where we're at, and we're just going to make a beat. So I'm going to put channel 1 of Metron on Crater, channel 2 into the accent on Crater. That's another cool thing about drums is you have multiple inputs that you can plug different gates and triggers into. So fracture, we're going to use the normal trigger on channel 3, and channel 4, we're going to use the tick input, which is a way to just trigger one of the samples in here so you can get a different sound. Chimera, I'm going to use the trigger on channel 5. Channel 6, we're going to go into the accent. And then channel 7, I'm going to go into the choke. And then channel 9, we're going to use Crucible's edge input, and channel 10, we're going to use its mid input. And then on channel 11, we're going to put that into its choke input. So now all we got to do is just route some audio. So I'm going to take audio out of Crater, run it into channel 1 on the mixer, fracture into channel 2, Chimera into channel 3, and Crucible into channel 4. So one of the things to be thinking about when you are setting up your system is organization. Traditional drum machines usually will read from left to right, so that's why I've set up my drums from kick drum, clap, tambourine to cymbal, and then I've got those 4 channels on my first 4 channels of my performance mixer here, and then I've got I'm kind of using the Metron in a way that I can remember what the groups of triggers are. So 1 and 2 are the Crater, 3 and 4 are the fracture, 5 through 8, I'm just leaving 8 blank, so I'm using 5 through 7 on the Chimera, and then I've got 9 through 11 on Crucible. So again, I'm leaving those blank so that way in my head I can separate which drum I'm using when I'm using the sequencer. All right, so now all I got to do is just make a little beat. So we're going to bring up our kick drum. Let's make it sound like a kick drum, why don't we? And with the individual drum modules, it's really quick just to dial in the sound you're looking for. So now we're going to go into the clap zone. And I'm going to accent beat number 1 for the kick. So that way we've got just a little bit louder on the downbeat there. So now we're going to go to channels 5 through 8 and we're going to do the Chimera. And I just like to do a shaker pattern for this. Chimera is really nice because you can make all these different kinds of sounds. So we're going to go through, we can make just like kind of a drum machine sound here. And I can throw in different accents. And you can hear that a little bit. You can hear those accents coming through. But if we put this switch in the middle, now we've got more of a shaker algorithm. And so what it does is it says when there's an accent, that's going to be loud. The next trigger is going to be quiet. The next trigger is going to be a random voltage. And then the next trigger is going to be quiet. So it makes that shaker sound. But when you put different accents, when you spread the accents around and make some repeating ones, you can get some pretty cool sounds. We also have the choke in here. So I'm going to bring up the decay a little bit, and then we'll just put some triggers in to choke it out. All right, there's a pretty cool beat right there, and that's just using triggers and gates. So the next thing is our Crucible. So I'm going to go down to 9 through 12 and just make our sound here, bring it up on the fader, and we'll make our cymbal sound here. And so how Crucible works is we're hitting the edge of the cymbal now. If we put in some more triggers on the mid input, that's the middle of the cymbal, in between the edge and the bell, And then if we hit them both at the same time, that's the bell sound. And now the same thing with Chimera, we can use some gates here. So I'm going to use some longer gates, and we'll send that into the choke input here. So that's this channel right here. So there we go. There's a super unique beat, and that's just using the triggers and gates. Now, obviously, I could stop here and we could have tons of fun. So we can say, I'm going to copy this variation over to the next one, and I'm going to make a 4 on the floor kind of beat. Here we go. There's tons of tutorials and things on Metron if you're interested on what I'm doing on there. What I'm doing right now is just using the 2 variations to make 2 different beats. And yeah, check out those videos when you can if you have not yet. All right, so now we've got our mixer. Let's just set up some effects. So we're gonna set up the overseer, and I'm gonna do that on the master send and return. So you can see here I've got these sends and returns on the mixer. And I'm going to take the send, and this is a stereo send and return for the master signal. So I'm going to run that into overseer. I'm going to take the outputs into the return. And I just got to find another cable real quick. That isn't 12 feet long. We're going to run that into the return here. Now we've got those guys. And now when I turn this on, we can filter out the lows, or we can turn it the other way and filter out the highs. And then this handy little switch just lets us turn it on and off, just like a DJ mixer. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an auxiliary send. I'm going to use the Geiger counter for that. So now I'm just going to take auxiliary 1. We're going to run that up into the input of the Geiger counter, and we're going to take the output and just run it into the auxiliary return. And so now, just like a normal mixer, we can use the performance mixer just to send some things to the Geiger counter. So right now I'm just going to send the cymbal to there. That sounds pretty cool. But what if I only want that to happen every once in a while? Well, we still have channels left on our Metron. So I'm going to go to channels 13 through 16. And I'm going to take channel 13, and I'm going to run it into the auxiliary CV. So that's this guy right here. Now we aren't hearing it because this is the basically overall level of the auxiliary send. So I can just send some gates into this CV input, and then we can say when we want to hear the Geiger counter. And there we go. Now we've got some momentary effect sends happening. Ooh, that's nice. Let's run our clap into it too. So I'll just turn the effect send on and turn up a little bit of level. We can run our kick into it. And now you can really hear that we're getting the kick drum through the Geiger counter on these 3 steps, but we're not getting it on this step. So for now, I'm going to take that back out. We're just going to make this sound real nice. We'll just use it only on the cymbal again there. Turn it down on the level. There we go. Now it's just in the background there. All right, so one thing to remember with this is that we can turn on and off the sends just with these switches here. So we can just say I only want it to happen once in a while, and that's kind of a live performance thing we can do. And it's nice to use these switches on the performance mixer as kind of a momentary on and off thing. That's really, really useful for delays and reverbs and things like that as well. So definitely a thing to think about. All right, so what's next? We can do some cool modulation. So we're gonna take this Voltera here and we're gonna use it to modulate the, let's use it to modulate what the clap sounds like. So I'm just gonna take output number 1 and I'm gonna run it into decay here. So now we'll go back to our clap track so we know where it's at. It's this guy right here. And I'm gonna say I want my first one to be nice and short. And first I'm gonna set up my voltage range here. There we go, we're gonna use 0 to 5 volts. So that one's nice and short, and then this one we're gonna make it a little bit longer. Let's add some ticks. So we're just gonna put some stuff in here. Here we go. You can kind of hear those pitter-patter claps in the back. So I'm going to take output to a Voltera and I'm going to run that into the surface input. And so now I'm just going to record this knob. And that's basically changing the, like what the people are holding that are clapping in this digital module, right? All right, so that's pretty cool. All right, so we've got modulation, we've got sends and returns on our mixer. The next thing we can do is some like synthesis style tricks. So one thing you can do a lot of these things that we've done so far in some standalone drum machines, and especially like the computer if that's your workflow. But what we haven't gotten to yet is some more synthesis techniques. So we're listening to that cymbal right now. One of my favorite tricks is to send audio rate modulation. So we're gonna send the output of this mod box. We've got the knob all the way up, and we're just gonna plug it into the pitch here. So now you can hear that cymbal has become way more noisy, right? Let's see if we take it out. That's what it sounds like. So let's say I only want this to happen every once in a while. Well, I can't really modulate that parameter. I can't say turn this on or turn it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this modulation through a VCA. So we're going to use the DVCA. And what a VCA does is it literally just doesn't let signal through until it is told to do so. We're gonna run that into the pitch here. As you can tell, nothing's changed. Now I can use this bias knob to offset and basically turn up or down the modulation. So how do we do that remotely? Well, we just use another gate track, and I'm going to use an envelope so that way we can get some kind of cool dynamic sounds with it. So let me just grab another cable here. What we're going to do is we're going to take output 13, the one we were using for our auxiliary sends, and we're going to run it into the multi-mode envelope here. Now you can see that when this output lights up, we're triggering the envelope, and I'm going to take the envelope out and run it into the CV on the DVCA. And now we can decide when that audio rate modulation is going to occur. So that's channel number 13. I'm just going to come here, do some nice long gates. And we'll turn up some stuff. We're on an AR envelope, so we're going to go back to a sustain envelope. There we go. Let's bring the beat back in. So yeah, that's just a real fun way. Like, you know, we like that modulation, but we don't want to have it happen all the time. Just put a VCA in that path, and now we can say we can make that happen momentarily. All right, so let's change up our beat here. Copy A over to B. We're going to change up our kick drum pattern. And let's make some cool gate patterns for that. One cool thing about Crater is you can send long gates in it, and then with this sustain, you can basically say, I want you to stay open for a certain amount of time. So we're going to use some 100% gates, and then we're going to use some shorter gates in between. And then we'll switch up our Chimera symbol here, so we'll do that on the upbeats here. And we're still going to get some modulation and stuff, so let's do some nice bell sounds, and we'll move into it. Turn that cymbal up a little bit. And then let's do some chokes here on the cymbal. This is just a beat I've never heard before on any sort of drum machine. And I don't know, I mean, you might be able to make this in the computer, but doing this in 15 minutes or whatever it's been, the Eurorack is just a really fun and fast way of creating these beats. So now we can use our overseer to kind of make some effects happen. I'm going to take the other output of this mod box and I'm going to run it into the tilt of the overseer. Now we're going to get this crazy stereo effect when we turn it on. And just drop it back in. So feel free to sample this if you want to, because I definitely want to. This is a pretty dope beat. All right, so another thing we can do is we can use our Voltera to pitch our Crater. So I'm just going to take the output of this one. It's a long cable. It's kind of unnecessary, but that's what I got right now. And we've got voltage on there, so I'm just going to clear that out and go here, and let's make our voltage range. Let's just do 2 octaves, and we'll just do a couple notes. So we can only pick a few notes, and then we'll say I want this guy to be C, and then I want this one to be E flat. So really quick way just to pitch that kick drum with some sequencing, and just give some like melodic-ish movement to that kick drum, get some bass line kind of stuff. Man, I'm having a really good time. Let's bring this Geiger counter back in. See what this overseer sounds like. Oh, crazy. Now with the mixer again, you know, we've got control of sending stuff the aux sends. We've also just got, you know, faders that we can mute and bring stuff back in. Real fun way just to keep things moving. All right, so all of this modulation is great and all, but it is pretty wild. So what are some other things we can do with this kind of setup to make some more, let's just make some more traditional sounds, but let's say that we want different parts of our set to have different drums, right? So let's say we want like presets. One of the things about Eurorack in general that a lot of people will tell you is that when you make something like this, you'll never make the same thing twice. And while there is quite a bit of truth to that when it comes down to just plugging things in and experimenting, when you learn what you like, you can recreate it pretty easily. You know, the brain is a pretty amazing thing, and you can remember quite a bit of things. So although I probably couldn't recreate this patch perfectly from scratch, you know, I could probably get us pretty close. But let's just talk about presets. Let's say I want my kick drum to sound like this during this track, and I want it to sound different during the next track. The first track, we're going to use a really intense clap, and the second track, we want it to be less intense. We want it to be more of like a J Dilla kind of crunchy thing. So how can we do that? Well, that's another really cool thing about Voltera and sequencers like it. You can use what I like to say really slow sequences to change things. So let's not even think about them as sequences anymore. Let's just think of them as step one of the pattern we're playing. We're going to send some voltages to change the sounds that we're using. So in order to do that, I'm just going to take some things apart real quick and just kind of simplify where we're at. So let's listen to the beat while we do it, because it's fun. We'll take our Chimera stuff out. We'll take this whole modulation chain out right now just to simplify some things so we know what's going on. Chimera will go into there. Again, that's fine. We'll take this Modbox stuff out of the overseer. So we've just got static little bits on the overseer. And then we've still got our Geiger counter over here. We can turn that on and off. So let's talk presets. First thing we're going to do is we're going to clear out our Volteras. So let's just clear out the channels that have voltages on them. I'm going to take this Voltera out, number one, and I'm going to do a couple things. So we're going to use the Voltera number one. We're going to use that on decay. And why don't we use click timbre? So now we'll just listen to the kick. And let's go to more of like a, we'll clear our sequences here, and we'll just do a 4 on the floor kick for now. All right, so on step one, this is where I can kind of create my preset. So I'm just gonna hold step one, dial in decay that I like. So that's a nice decay. And then let's find a click timbre that we like. So I've got my click level all the way up. I should probably check my voltage range. We'll use -5 to 5 for this one. We'll turn the click timbre down on there so we can find exactly the one we want. All right, so that's nice. And while we're at it, let's put pitch in there. So we're going to take channel 3 of Voltera, we're going to run that into volt per octave, and we'll use a -5 to 5 range on there too, and we'll say step one, I want that to be, let's use a nice low kick for that. All right, cool, so we're there. We're going to bring our fracture back in, and then we'll bring our Chimera back in, and we'll just stick with that for now. And with our Chimera, we'll put in a couple different accents here. All right, so let's say that's our beat for song one. I'm just gonna go into memory, and I'm gonna save that, so I like that. I'm gonna save it on memory slot 2 as well, so I have 2 copies. Now I'm gonna take this same beat, and I'm just going to say on step 1, let's change it up a little bit. So let's make it a shorter decay. We'll do a different click timbre, and then we'll do a completely different pitch here. All right, so that's nice. Let's save that. And now we can load 1 when it comes around again. This is our preset on our kick drum for memory slot number 1. And if we load number 2, oh, I just saved it. So let's do that again. I'm just gonna go to step 1 here. We'll change up some things. Do a shorter kick, do a different pitch here, and then a different click timbre. There we go, let's save that. And then now we're gonna load 1. We'll load number 2. And there's our preset for our kick drum. So there we go. So now let's say we want to do the same thing. We have one more output on our Voltera here. So let's do that on clap. And we'll just say the decay. So instead of using this Voltera, we'll take those out. And we'll just use channel 4 on here to do decay on our fracture. So for this memory slot, we're just going to go through here. Step 1, make a nice little short guy. And then, yeah, why don't we actually take this Voltera out, channel 1. Let's run that into the surface. So now we'll say step 1 and figure out what surface we want. There we go. That's cool. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go into memory, and let's load up number 2 now. And let's change up the clap sound for this guy. So we're going to say I want this one to be a little bit longer. And we'll do a different surface here for this guy. Oh, whoops, I'm holding the wrong thing. Step 1, my bad. There we go, that one's pretty cool. Let's turn the decay down a little bit. All right, that's cool. And then the other thing I want to do is I want the density to change. So I'm going to use density on channel 2 here. So we'll use 0 to 5. And we can say I want it to be not so dense there. So there we go. I'm going to save that to slot 2. I'm going to load up slot 1. And let's make this guy more dense. Maybe turn up the decay just a little bit. Let's save that. All right, so session number 1. This is my preset for session number 1. And when we're ready, we go into session number 2. I just hit load, and we've got a whole new preset. So one thing about this is when you're traveling to a gig, obviously you need a case that can be closed while it's patched. So you can take a neatly patched system. Probably want to do a lot better than I did here. Maybe get some cable ties and tie some things up so you can get to the things, get to the knobs and whatnot. But you can make presets by using Voltera or a similar sequencer to that. So that's it. I hope this gives you some inspiration and just a little bit of insight into why Eurorack drums is a fun way to go. Using, drum machines and the computer and anything you can, I always say if you're making music in a way you like it, keep doing that. But this is a super inspiring, always able to change, customizable, just really open-ended way to make music. And it's really immediate. I mean, I know it seems like it takes a long time, but this video, we're at probably like 30 minutes of jamming, and we've made tons of different sounds, and any one of those, we could save the pattern inside of Metron and get that pattern so we could recall it again later down the road. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Hit us up on Instagram. If you have any sort of video you would like to see, throw it in the comments below. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace.